So in this discussion, we'll be focusing on why personalised learning is so important to student attainment. We'll be discussing strategies and initiatives for effectively implementing personalised learning, including any potential challenges, and also how it can be aligned to the curriculum and the positive outcomes that can be had from adopting personalised learning into the classroom. So yeah, delighted to be joined by you all. Thank you so much for taking the time. It'd be great to just do some quick introductions of each of you. So yeah, Lucy, do you want to kick off with a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Lucy Willis. I am head of secondary at Raha International School in Abu Dhabi. But prior to this, I spent many years running actually at one point a personalized learning team at a school in Brazil, special educational needs teams in a school in Japan. And personalization and individualized learning is a great passion of mine. I'm currently in year 2 of my PhD, and my research topic is around authentic and equitable assessment practices. So that is also something that's very close to my heart. And I hope that we get into some good discussion about assessment during this conversation, because that's something that I think is really key to the ideas of personalization. So I'm excited to talk to my colleagues here and find out more.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lucy. Kira, do you want to go next?
Hi guys, my name is Kira Gillespie. I work at the Alice Smith School in KL. I am head of achievement and progression in the sixth form. And as part of that role, I am head of academic coaching, which is an incredibly personalised approach to supporting our students and to delivering intervention strategies. So again, it is something that is very close to my heart. I too, like Lucy, am very excited about talking about how personalised learning could open up doors in assessment, how maybe current practices are acting as potential barriers, but the possibilities that exist within that as well. So I'm really excited about that too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kira. Gavin, do you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gavin Lazaro. I'm here in Lisbon, a very chilly Lisbon. And my background, I've had a lot of schools over the past 30 years, nearly internationally. And my current role is Deputy Head for Academics at the Lisbon International School here. I'm intrigued by the whole topic of personalised learning. My last few schools have been really focused on personalised learning. And I think really for me, what I'm most interested in is the range of practices that make personalized learning impactful, but also it's got to be manageable. Those two sort of sometimes are at cross purposes. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion. Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Gavin. Brian, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. My name is Brian Oshiro. I am an education consultant with Education Perfect, a New Zealand-based learning platform. Prior to that, I was a math and languages teacher, not at the same time, both in China and in Texas. And I'm excited to hear everybody's take on personalized learning today. Great to be here.
Brilliant. Sal, do you want to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Sal Gordon. I'm the Head of Teaching and Learning at Green School Bali in the jungles of Indonesia. We're working hard, having fun, getting real in the jungle with a new model of school and a new model of education that's trying to redefine its purpose into making the world a better place. We're a community of learners making our world sustainable, and we believe that schools and education needs to lift itself a little bit in terms of its purpose. And so yeah, I'm pretty overawed by the people on this call today. I'm just going to get my notebook out and start learning. So happy to be here.
Well, thanks, Sal. And finally, John.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Kelly. I'm here in Mexico City, originally from England. I've just opened my own school called Colegio Ikigai, and the mission of our school is to make sure all of our students can find their passion in life. And one of the things that we do promote highly in the school is personalized education. And I think that's a really great jump off point for the discussion today, because a lot of what Education 3.0 and technology can do for us today is highly personalized learning pathways and experiences in the world. And I think when we do that, we get higher engagement, better motivation from students. But we have to definitely think about how we leave education 1.0 behind. And as my colleagues have mentioned today, I think talking about evaluation is essential. talking about different educational models that can really have an impact on the learner are really, really important. And also, I think in personalized education, for me, what really stands out is small class sizes. Collegio Ikigai has got a cap at 12 students per class, one generation per class. And I think it's the first time I've worked in a small school environment. And when I think about personalized education, that's my first starting point. It's like a small class size. When 12 to 15 is an absolute perfect number to get into project-based learning. Anything more than that is you're starting to struggle. So delighted to be part of the conversation and delighted to share my ideas today.
Fantastic, thanks, John. I think that leads on to the first question, really. So going to open it up to the floor. So what does personalized learning mean to you? Very broad. Who'd like to take that one on first? Lucy, do you want to you go first?
Yeah, I could go. I went first in the introductions. Maybe we'll keep the order. I was thinking about this question and thinking about a keynote that I saw recently at the IB Global Conference in The Hague, where one of the speakers talked about complex problems needing complex solutions. And I think embracing the idea of complexity means embracing the idea of individualization and diversity. And so for me, personalization in education means that we recognize the value of having a diverse classroom, having a diverse school, having that range of perspectives, both in our students and our staff, and recognizing the benefit of that and moving away from any kind of rigid systems, one size fits all, education systems that allows children to fall outside of the edges of them because they can't fit the system. So really moving to that idea of we change, they don't change. We need to change things to meet the needs of the young people that we have in front of us and allow them to develop the skills that they need to tackle the complex problems that the world that they're going into, requires, future adults to be able to solve. So to me, that's the key of personalization, individualization, valuing of diversity, and looking at ways to change a system that does not understand that people are different to one another.
Max, can I come in on that?
Absolutely.
Because one of the things that, Lucy, that you talked about was flexibility, and I think that ability for teachers to be flexible in front of their students, or even being flexible behind their students, is really important. And I'm sure between us we've done huge amounts of walkthroughs of lesson observations. We've seen great learning taking place, and the lessons that really sing out to me are the lessons where you see students really engaged, motivated, actively learning about a variety of things. The teacher is very much taking a back seat, but sort of guiding them. And the teacher is able to walk around and meet the needs of individual students whilst making sure the whole class is on a general pace forward at individual paces, I guess. That's the bit that makes sense. And it's that adaptive, that flexible approach that really, really sings to me. So thanks for that, Lucy.
Complex craft, isn't it? That adaptive teaching. It's not easy. And having really a smaller group. Yeah, sorry, Sal, go.
All right, we're talking about like personalizing learning, which is funny that we'd have to even rationalize it because learning itself is such a personal thing. And so there's a whole heap of educators in a space talking about how are we and why should we and personalize schools and learning in schools when the very thing that's happening and is always happening in schools and is very personal to each learner, to all of us when we're at school, and to our students at school every day. They make it personal if we can help make it personal. And that for me, a big part of that is a social emotional aspect and understanding that's important and something that schools should be thinking of. It's about thinking, well, moving away from information models and skills and values, bringing those to the front of an experience, not just to the side. Yeah, you do. I'm probably a little bit more interested in how people want to assess formally for those sorts of things, because for a long time we've been putting students into a square box of standardized curriculum, standardized assessment. along a little conveyor belt with like exam gateways at the end of each year. Now to open that up and say, right, do something with your learning, learn more than just information. And then for educators to go, wow, we've got to prove that they're learning. I'm interested to see how we talk about that.
Well, one of the challenges. Oh no, you go first, Kira. Go on.
I think it's so interesting hearing both of you speak there, because like when you read through, the ideas of personalization, it just seems like a no-brainer. But yet we still find ourselves time after time studying what you've just said, Sal, having to justify why it's the best approach. And then you hit the nail on the head. The reason that we're having to justify it is because at the end of the day, there is a box, there is a very small goal that we have to get the kids through. And what's happened over time is we have let that goal define the entire journey. And instead of realizing that there are multiple journeys to get to that goal, and it doesn't matter what path they take, let it be, start on one path, move to another, mix and match, whatever that path is, and yet let's not let the end goal define everything else that we do. It's left that end goal, I think, leaves teachers and educators nervous and unwilling to take risks that then stop their kids taking risks. And I find the whole process so interesting, and it's just so wonderful that I know I've said we're here justifying why it's the best approach, but by us sitting talking, it's breaking down those barriers. It's making other educators who are listening less afraid to allow that freedom and allow kids to explore alternative pathways.
Max, if I could jump in, admittedly, I've been out of the classroom for the last 3 years or so, and as I can see from just the comments, obviously there are a lot of dimensions to personalized learning. But if I were to narrow it down, kind of as someone who's not in the classroom, kind of listening to everybody now, to maybe 2 or 3 like key tenets, I would say, I think there needs to be a clear understanding of the goals of the student. And that stakeholders really need to get at the core of what students want to achieve besides the standard that everybody's mentioning. There also needs to be a clear plan of how to get there, right? And this needs to involve the teacher and the student. And then what a lot of people have alluded to, the accountability mechanism, right? How are the students going to show progress? When are they going to show progress? And because the way that students are going to show progress may differ from, let's say, traditional grading, this progress needs to be highly visible to everyone, right? Parents, administrators, students, and teachers. But although there may be some variation in how to achieve a certain standard, obviously the possibilities that personalized learning offers is exciting. And I think it puts students at the core of their learning pathway, just giving them more to say. And I think this is more aligned with what happens in the real world, right? Once they get outside the safe confines of the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, John, to add your thoughts there.
Hey everyone, my photocopier just started I'm here in school today. Yeah. So I completely agree with everyone. This is what I would add. I think we need to focus on why we need to do it first and foremost. Okay, focusing on the why is really important, and we have to really understand that the world is completely changing. Digital transformation is going to give a professional work life that's unlike professional work life before. And I don't think we need to sort of reinvent the wheel in some ways. We know, and the major consulting companies have found a lot of information out there about what the workplace will be like past 2030, past 2040. And, what they're all saying is that there's a much more higher focus on abilities and competencies in terms of, professional success than there is on content, exam. And then when we look at the 2 paradigms, I think really need to be broken in education. The first one is, why isn't the professional world more like the school life? There doesn't seem to be a connection for me between activities that we give children in school, the activities that we sort of occupy ourselves with in future life. The second is that, achieving high exam results is no indication of success in life. And this is where the skills gap comes in. Our children are going to universities, they're putting themselves into a lot of debt. They're coming out at the end of it and they're struggling to get jobs. Why? Because the company is saying there's a mismatch between skills. What we identified in Collegio Ikigai is phenomenon-based learning, which comes over from Finland. And the thing I really liked about it is they say, get rid of the exams. Just get rid of exams. There's many ways you can evaluate children's learning and progress, make it visible. And I was kind of like, when I first approached it this year, this is the first time I've run a school where there's been no exams. My son's in the school as well. But to watch the sort of freedom that liberates them as they realize that actually the way in which we're going to assess their work is as a community, in learning books, in presentations, that they're not going to get given number grades for their work. They're actually going to get qualitative feedback quickly on the grades, something that's highly personalized to them. But it's just been liberating for the children. So I think the key question for me in personalized education is, how do you manage the evaluations? And to tackle some of these big ideas, I think the system, which is Education 1.0, has been blown away from the pandemic. I think the pandemic has made it completely obsolete, irrelevant to where our future world is going to. And if we connect with the whys and why we want personalized education, I think Sal mentioned it over there in Bali really, really well. It's like, you want to do it because the learning journey is personal to you. And what you want is children to discover a passion, a reason to live their lives. And if you discover that passion, in my opinion, that's why you can start to create their life and their career around what they want to do. It's more important, I think, in education for children to really connect with who they are in the world, why they're here, where they want to go, and what they want to do. And then we can work around their career options and career paths and options and choices, not discarding the idea that I don't think university is for every person. I think, we should be offering ideas to start accelerator labs and start entrepreneurs, and they can start their own businesses and they could become activists. It's not just this conveyor belt where they get to the end of their school in 18 and they have to go to university. I don't think that's the perfect option for them. And I think what will happen over the course of the end of this decade is that we'll get so many digital tools and so many platforms and so many ways in which we can offer personalized learning. But that's 2030. Personalized learning will be the norm in higher education as well in K-12. But that's so my thoughts on it.
Thanks, John. Gavin, I think you had a...
Yeah, I was actually just going to come on that point, John, because I completely agree about this whole issue of universities. My background is secondary education, so in some ways, in international schools, we see universities as some stage for students to head along, and the vast majority, in my experience, the vast majority of international school parents absolutely want their children to go to university. Most of them will not want their children to have a gap year. And I think there's a degree of mythology around the benefits of university. For students to go to university, for some students to go to university, it's a great thing. But there are so many benefits to not going to university and going into the world of work, or even spending that year abroad and doing some service learning. But even if the students who are heading to university, we've got a very, very narrow way of working out whether a child is right for a university. And essentially that's driven around exam results. And it seems such a shame that students have to prove themselves through exam results to get into a university, when we know that lots of students who get great exam results drop out from university because they don't have the broader skills to be successful. So my adage when I speak with families, prospective families, existing families, is our aim as a school is not to get students into university, it's to get students out of university living happy, healthy, successful lives. That's what education, I think, is really all about. And I think all of this discussion is heading towards happy, healthy, successful lives. That's what we're all after.
I've got a great gap year story. It turned into a gap decade, and we highly promote that as well.
Yeah.
Are you still on your gap decade, Sal?
Yeah, I was going to say.
No. Yeah, well, it's a different sort of gap. Mind the gap over here in Bali for sure. Yeah.
Excellent.
I suppose talking about the future and all of this personalized learning, aren't we talking about sort of really school just being a part we know the workforce is going to be really defined. It's going to be defined by a person's ability to learn. Learnability, that's going to define the future generations. And then you define school in terms of an impersonalized school, if we want to look at the opposite and a bad idea factory on it, we're really going the wrong way, aren't we? If we want to put our children through school, almost secondary, but we've got a whole school here, so right through from 3-year-old to 18-year-old at that stage, and if we're going to put them through a cookie cutter machine, yeah, we've been doing that too long, and so it's not an option for us.
Yeah, and just sort of now sort of narrowing it down and looking at some of the you know, the great work that you've each been doing in your own educational settings around the specific strategies and initiatives that you've tried and implemented. It'd be great to hear to some of those pieces around how you've tried to create a more personalized learning journey in your own contexts. If you'd like to, John, do you want to kick that one off?
You like Max? I'd like to share something there.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, can you? The photocopier at schools. It's like such a distraction to doing other things like kids learning. So I'd like to share that, you know, like this year, particularly this year, because I've had complete freedom for the first time in my career to put into my school whatever programs I like. I pick the programs that I like the most. So that was really interesting. And I started working with a company over in Australia called Edu Metaverse, with a guy called Andrew Wright. And we sort of paired up. We started developing something that we're calling eco-based learning systems. And it's been amazing. It's been a hard learning curve. But what we're doing is we're putting lots of our students in metaverse environments and using a hybrid 3.0 methodology, which is allowing us to like do project-based learning in schools, both in metaverse worlds and inside. And the effects have been absolutely amazing. I can't speak highly enough of how motivated our students are in the primary school age group. That's where we go to learn in metaverse worlds. What we do is we sort of embed the activities inside these worlds. Each world sort of has portals to new worlds that can be discovered. We've designed sort of like adventurous narratives around these journeys, and it's been the best way that I could say that, you know, best example that we've got in our school of personalized learning environments. And I think when we look at higher education, there's a university that's about to open in Mexico. And their idea behind this new university is when a candidate, they call them, comes to the school, there's no barrier of entry to get into the university. You can start in any type of career that you want. So you start in psychology, or you can start in philosophy, you start in education, engineering, anywhere. But as you go in, they use micro credentials, and every 6 weeks, you finish that unit, and the sort of algorithm behind the university sort of gives you 3 or 4 different pathways that you can go on. And the idea is that eventually, like a candidate can come into the university, start in psychology and finish in medicine, or a person can come in medicine and finish up in aviation or something like that. That's the idea of like this eco-based learning system. Say like my son is 11 years old, and I've already identified that my son will not go to university. He's just not like he's part of this fortnight generation. They think differently, have different spatial awareness, different abilities, and I'm not going to force him to go to university unless he wants to, you know. But what I can see inside Colicchio Ikigai that's working really well is when the students are sort of like layering digital ability to like express themselves in the environments they want to be in through these metaverse worlds, infused with AI and infused with all of this beauty of Web 3.0. You know, the engagement to learn is through the roof. I had a group of students. I'm teaching history in grade 5 this year, and a group of students that stayed behind after school to do my history class. They didn't want to miss their metaverse learning experience. I had to phone up their parents and say, look, you're not going to believe this, but your kid wants to stay behind and take my history class because we must stay in this metaverse, etc. Engagement is king for me in those types of areas. And if you've not looked at this type of work, this metaverse learning, eco-based learning systems, it's amazing. You should really think.
Wow, that's incredible. That's pretty inspiring. It's to do that, just touching on that, John, a little bit, how might a school, if they want to try this with their classroom, where would you advise they start? Just a couple quick points around that, I suppose.
A little bit more complicated than just doing it. Yeah, I think get the methodology right, infuse your team, find out the people inside your school who would really like run with that project inside the environment. Get in touch with Andrew Wright over at Metaverse. He's got lots and lots of really good ideas. Partner up, find these spaces, go slow, test it out, see how it works, etc., etc. But like the advantages of using this hybrid methodology where students do part of their class inside the classroom, but then they jump into their sort of digital world inside the same classroom to do their exploration, experimentation, investigation, and then come back into the classroom. This methodology for me is working really, really well. And of course, they're so motivated by the narratives and the idea of being in these different worlds. It's really valuable. I think just identify who could do it in your school first, you, and then put a plan together and talk to people and get out onto Twitter and in LinkedIn and find ideas out there, because they're all there at the moment.
Brilliant, thanks, John. Sal, Lucy, Kiara, Gavin, how about yourselves?
I'm thinking about the universal design for learning model, which some of you will be familiar with, and it has 3 pillars around it's kind of a differentiation model. And it talks about multiple means of representation as one way to personalize learning for students. It talks about multiple means of action and expression, but it also talks about multiple means of engagement. And what I was hearing when I listened to John is that he's found a way to deeply engage the students in their learning. And even if we don't have the same resources to put them into a metaverse, which sounds incredible, it is important for us to consider how to engage students. I feel like, Sal touched on this as well, talking about teaching to the heart. If the students are not engaged, shifting the way what we're delivering and how we deliver it to engage them is a really important way to start to personalize learning. I remember in the past, maybe a teacher told me someone fell asleep in their class and they wanted me to be angry with the kid, but actually I was like, why is your lesson so boring that they've fallen asleep? So having students engaged and finding simpler ways to do that. We have a maths unit going on at the moment that's about city design, and one of our students is really connected to virtual reality. So he's managed to put his city design into his VR goggles, and he's going to demonstrate his city through them. Not all of the students can do that, but making space for him to share his work with the technology that he's able to access. To me, that's the idea of personalization. And then my dream is to get to where John is, because it really does sound so exciting.
Can I jump?
Yeah.
So I'll be very quick. Just to jump on that as well, like you've hit the nail on the head, just increasing student engagement. That is what it's all about. If you're achieving that, everything else falls into place. And I think for me, the best way of doing that is giving the students options. If they are given as many options as possible, those options could be, pre-decided by you, or it could be completely open, but given the students options, allowing them to decide small things like, am I going to submit this assessment via a video or a lab report, or completely blowing it up, how am I going to approach this whole topic? Giving them those options, giving them the freedom to make decisions for themselves, that just increases student engagement so much. And that for me is a thing that has been lacking so much. Those choices are taken away from them. It's something that's happening to them rather than something that they're involved in. And I think that could be something that could be so easily changed. Just giving them a number of options, really easily change, and would just very quickly increase student engagement.
Brilliant, Gavin.
Probably should have jumped in there, because I was just going to talk about personalizing that learning journey like that. But then maybe I could even go back a step and think about, it not being a big thing to add some sort of outcomes to learning experiences where, educators are creative people. Teachers are putting on a show every day, a show of learning, a magic learning, but to add outcomes or just provide opportunities in the simplest way, provide opportunities for students to do something with their learning now. And that something can mean something to that learner, whether it's a 3-year-old or an 18-year-old. It can be a personal outcome or it can be collective as well. And so then I think, the how is more like, which we do a lot at Green School, because a lot of those opportunities we educate for a sustainable future, not about the world or about sustainability, but for it. And so if you're providing opportunities for students to do something with their learning now, rather than just that standard information assessment, and you go, right, well, let's integrate things. Let's teach more thematically. Let's connect all of these learning pieces, because that allows a learner to personalize it as well. Let's bring in art and music and science and literature all together, because you can actually create an experience for 20 kids in a room with those opportunities to when you integrate, because you're providing opportunities for students to personalize it themselves. And then you've got, I talked about skills and values. I think that's very, very important, but the project-based ideas. And one thing we probably haven't talked about, which is an easy switch to flick, is talking about a relook at a pedagogy. And that was really important to us at Green School in terms of practical. If you want to flip a model of this school, look at your pedagogy and redefine that. And ours is based on relationships, experiential learning that is authentic and local to global. It's real learning, but it's first that relationship point that's so foundational to it. I'll go back to where we started, almost, of building a relationship with learners, building a relationship about learning, building a relationship between the real world. So I think that the pedagogy ideas is really important for schools to go, right, if we want to start doing things differently in a quick way, let's look at our pedagogy. How are we creating learning experiences? Not just what we're teaching, but how. And that's how you personalize it too.
Can I come in on that? Because I think that I agree completely with everything that's been said so far. I think one of the challenges for education, government education systems, international education around the world is an aspect of being brave. I'm in a really fascinating situation where we're starting up a school. So I'm having to sell a dream. I'm selling a dream to parents, I'm selling a dream to students, and I'm selling a dream to staff as well. And the thing that's really, perhaps, I shouldn't be surprised, but the thing that has surprised me a little bit is the number of staff that I'm interviewing right now who are dead set sold. We've got 5 values, we've got 3 principles. The curriculum we're offering we're not being as brave as perhaps we could be, because we need some solidity to a school that doesn't yet exist. And yet we're finding staff are flocking to us because they love the pedagogy that we are selling on paper. And the parents are also coming to us because they absolutely believe that exams, they understand that the academics are important. We all understand that the academics are important to a degree, but what we're selling is a package that's not just the academics, and it's not holistic, loose, unclear stuff. There's a lovely hybrid that we're putting out there that parents are really, really buying into. So I guess the message that I want to send to the hundreds of thousands of viewers of this video over the next couple of weeks,
I hope not.
Is just try and be brave, because I think there is absolutely a market out there for schools who are saying, do you know what, in light of the pandemic, in light of where we see students, where we see our parents, where we see our staff, we think there's a market that absolutely needs, because remember, we can't do any of this without parent buy-in. Parents are ultimately, they've got to have that belief in what we're offering. But I truly believe that there is absolutely a large body of parents that's growing, that believes that a slightly alternative, non-exam based education is absolutely the way to go. We've got a lot of digital entrepreneurs here in Lisbon, and they're coming to us saying, what you offer as a school is what we want our children to grow up with. We want them to have those skills of curiosity, of energy, of connection, of communication, of clarity, of problem solving. We don't want students who can prove, my subject is chemistry, who can prove they can get a 9 at IGCSE chemistry. That's not just what it's about. It's partly, but it's not just what it's about. So be brave. That would be my message.
Yeah, fantastic. That's so interesting to sort of touch on that topic as well, of sort of moving away from just purely exam based. And what are some of the practical steps? Just thinking aloud here. What are some of the potential small incremental improvements that you could make, or changes that you could make in a traditional setup that could move more towards that way of, I suppose, assessing and it being a bit more varied, I suppose, that it's just focused on exams?
Can I just remind people of something that Brian said at the start? I'm paraphrasing here, but you said if you are providing a purely personalized way of learners accessing things, you need to make success incredibly visible. And I think that is a beautiful way to summarize it, because at the moment we see one way of making that success visible, and there are so many other ways. And touching on what Gavin said, there is an element of bravery, but showing success in other formats is completely possible. We just need to be brave, and also it is a much more difficult route to take. The easier route is to go down the grade 9 in chemistry. That's the easiest route. To actually show what a chemistry student, a successful chemistry student is a lot more difficult, but it is possible, and just it needs to be very visible. And what you said, Gavin, to parents as well, we can make it visible to parents. That is our jobs, is giving them opportunities to be successful, and for that to be evident to universities, evident to parents, evident to their peers. So I'm just hearing lots of things that other people are saying, and it's all coming together for me in this wonderful picture.
30-second add-on to what you said there, Kira. I don't think it's about making it visible. I think it's about making it valued by those groups. That's really important. I think it's easy to get parents in. It's easy to get students to see different opportunities for displaying their learning. But we need to be clear in terms of making a presentation as valuable an indicator of where a student is in their learning journey. That for me is important.
Yeah, I think about unconscious messaging in schools. We show what we value, and the students absorb what we value. And there was one school I worked in, and in the entrance to the school we had a board that had the university acceptances for that year. And I thought about all those students that walked past that board every day that didn't want to go to university. How did that feel when they wanted to make a different choice? It would be even harder for them to choose a different pathway because they saw what we thought was important. So again, I think easy shifts, like Sal was saying, the how. And for me, it's go back to the core. This is about learning. We want children to learn things. Don't let exams and content and curriculum get in the way and obfuscate what's happening. Are they learning something? That's the question I keep saying to my teachers. Have they learned what you thought they were going to learn? And how do you know? That's all. It's as simple as that in a way. And if they haven't, what are you going to do differently to try and make sure that they have? Because I think we can get lost and forget. And I loved listening to Sal talk, because he said the word learning about 500 times. So I knew that it was like so core to what you do. Not 500, I'm so dramatic, but 50 maybe. So go back to the learning. It's all about learning. That's what we do. That's our core business. And it gets hidden. It gets hidden by other things.
Especially if you want to really sort of expand the model of what a school is to more than just learning inside classrooms with students and teachers. And I'd like to think that we could think of really almost big picture and go, well, what about, the greater community that a school exists in, and the learning that community can have, the impact that can have. Because I know we're all talking about personalized learning so that it's not still that learning happens in individual personalized bubbles. That's not the point of it. It's to be able to enrich that learning so that it does connect learners and build relationships. Practical, I mean, that's big picture. Practical, I think you just need to a little bit, very much be brave. But one thing that's worked, here's a really good one that's worked for us, especially upper primary and above, is asking students to reflect on their own learning. And I was part of a middle school team that brought that into middle school reporting. It sounded like a crazy idea, like, you know, sitting around a room, bunch of teachers, this reporting, who loves writing reports, everyone? Yeah, no one, everyone's, you know, hands down. Why don't we get the students to write their own reports? And in the process, teach them how to reflect on their learning, which is a pretty awesome human skill in itself. Give them guidance at different ages, give them a structure and a framework to reflect. And then as they get older, they do become people that look at their own personal learning experience and can define and express what they've learned and what it's meant to them, how they connect their learning to other parts of their life, how they struggled, what skills they used, what values were important to overcome challenges. Real reflective assessment of personalized self-assessment is as valuable as you can do in a school. And I'd say every school should just start thinking about that in terms of a part of their reporting and assessment, because they're old enough to tell you, especially in high school, what they learned and how they're going to use it. And that's as good evidence as you get. Because I passed a lot of tests, but I don't know if I learned much.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts on that before we move on to our last question, actually? Any other final? Good. Cool. Well, that does lead to my final question. So sort of looking forwards into the future around personalized learning, and that obviously does look like that's the trend and where things are headed to a more personalized learning environment for students at schools. And how might this relate to assessment as well? So personalizing assessment we've already touched on, but if we can just sort of maybe look at that in a bit further depth around what the future of personalized learning or what the future of learning looks like in schools around the world, and how assessment can be more personalized too, to make a more personalized learning journey from end to end.
I'm sorry, I'll jump in. My big kind of, I don't know, light bulb moment is I'd like people to consider that so many assessment systems are designed because we want to try and have objectivity, and we design exams and things because we think that's going to give us some kind of objective evaluation of a learner. And, you know, the core is it's not objective, it's subjective. There are so many different elements impacting on even a multiple choice, you know, bubble test that aren't accounted for. That I think if we could let go of the idea of objectivity and evaluation and recognize that it is founded in subjectivity, and that's okay. And actually we need to utilize that to really understand progress and learning that's happening in schools. That's how assessment will shift. The idea that you give, this idea of equity comes from distribution, and equitable distribution means an equitable system. So everyone gets the same exam paper in the same amount of time. So therefore it's a fair test. You know, let's get rid of that idea, because that isn't fair. It's absolutely the opposite of it. So I think for me, in terms of assessment, it's that you cannot objectively assess a young person, one human to another. And let's stop trying to build systems that do that and build systems that subjectively look at what people are learning.
I just talked a lot about assessment, didn't I? Did I pre-answer the question?
Yeah. Any thoughts, John or Gavin or Karen?
Lucy, can I just ask, sorry, Lucy, can I just ask, how far away do you feel that we are from making that shift?
I think we touched on it at the start. The change, I think, comes in universities. I think if the universities shift, it will shift. But my hope now is things like ChatGTP and the changes in technology. Actually, technology might be the thing that shifts it. You know, because as technology grows, we can't have the same kind of assessment systems that we had before. And that leads perfectly to John, because I'm sure he has some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've got loads of thoughts on that. Yeah, I think the only thing I think about is how Web 3.0 is going to transform education. It is the thing that will propel us into the next decade, a more equitable system. I think high stakes testing needs to grow. It's past its due date. There's no way There's no way. It's just so completely unfair to say to a person who has sort of additional learning need like dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, that the only way that you can be successful in life is to go to university through a high stakes testing portfolio. It's contradictory of what we're trying to do here in education. Thing I really love with this transition to Web3 is things like, like for example, we're looking at like how would you create a lifelong portfolio of work and click your Ikigai. If you were a student that came in at age 3 and left at age 18, you will have done a sequence of different phenomenon-based learning projects through your journey with us. How is it that you could really collect all of that information together and all of that richness in your personalized learning journey? So you could present that at age 18 to the university that you would want to go to, and it could help you in that journey sort of discover, where you want to be in life. I think it has to, any conversation about this has to start of like defining what is success in life in the first place, because I think that's subjective. Objective, I think we need to get rid of this idea that being successful means that you go on this conveyor belt, you leave university at age 23, you work for a top consulting company, you find this perfect. It's like life's not like that at all. It's much different. But what I would love to do is explore ideas around things like NFTs, where you could maybe like the NFTs that could track this data, this personal learning journey, and give your students like these micro credentials as you went through the personalized learning journey. And I think a lot of that is possible today, right now with technology. So I think we are very, 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 very close to seeing these transitions in life. I think 2030 is the date that I'm really got in my mind. I think past in that next decade, I think that's when you'll see like a whole huge explosion. I think technology has got many, many ways in which it can actually give a solution to these fundamental problems. The most fundamental problem being high stakes testing, completely unfair, in my opinion.
Ryan, you've raised your hand there. Do you want to jump in?
Yes. First off, thank you for everybody for your insights. I think I'm getting a bit of a neck cramp because I'm like nodding my head so much, but it's been great, especially for someone who hasn't been in the classroom in a while. But to answer the question, I guess overall I'm optimistic. I think personalized learning does hold a lot of potential for students, and just listening to all the examples today has really got me excited to think about what the future holds. I do think there is a lot to work out in terms of the details. For example, like what flexibility looks like in terms of time and space and implementation and the final grading and that sort of thing. But with respect to assessment, I think assessment will be more iterative, right? I think mistakes will be more built into the process, and that students' advancement in a particular subject will be based more on, I guess, demonstrated mastery through regular checks in many different ways. I hope what this means too is that when it translates down to the students, that students will be able to consume material more critically, right? That they're not just necessarily relying on a vetted textbook anymore. They'll ask key questions more frequently because this is what they'll need to do, right? When they get out into the real world. And as someone now who's in ed tech rather, what excites me, I think, is that students will be the drivers behind educational design in the future, and that new products will be optimized to empower student choice, and hopefully that students will have more say in what edtech products are available to both them and their schools.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brian. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
Leave you with a question. What about like assessment in the future when you consider that failure has to be one of those success criteria? Put your mind around that.
So embracing failure, essentially, right? And
you leave the big question to last, Sal.
Yeah.
Leave it with that. I'm out of here.
I strongly agree, Sal. Yeah, you can only learn if you fail, right? Only learn if you fail. That's the only way. It's the only way.
It's not an easy concept to think about assessment of the future when you throw failure into the success criteria mix, for sure. But it's an opportunity, though, for us, isn't it? Rather, with educators looking at changing education, it's a challenge, but I see it as an opportunity. And rather than see education as something that we need to change, yeah, that's true. But when we change it, the impact that we'll have on the future is enormous. So that change is a lever. I see education as like a regenerative tool, not a problem to be solved, but a problem. It's a solution. It's a solution to so many of our problems, and so that's really exciting, I think. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Al.
I would just like to say, you know, that failure. I think language is important, and I think that how we sell the concept of failure to students, to colleagues, to school boards, to parents is really important as well. And it's not about failing at all. It's part of a learning journey. I think that's really, really important. It's an intrinsic part. And I just go back to my earlier point. You know, we all need to be brave. We need to be nudging our curriculum forward. We need to be nudging our assessment strategies forward. We need to be nudging our colleagues forward. We need to, as school leaders, we need to be prepared to be nudged by our colleagues, by our staff, and by our students, and really deeply look at what works and filter out what we think doesn't work. Look at the data, look at the research, and follow through on that. I think that international schools are so lucky, because in many ways we don't have to follow prescribed government systems. We've got a lot of flexibility here to do, to a degree, what we like. We still have a market that we need to I was going to say submit to work alongside. But we are in a really powerful position to make a difference and lead the ground. So let's hold hands and do that together. I think is really important.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. That's been absolutely fantastic. Yeah, hugely appreciate all of your time, and it's such a great start to the conversation. And yeah, maybe looking forward to doing a part two. It's such a major topic to start diving down into, but it's certainly the future, isn't it? A more personalized learning scheme for students. So yeah, thank you all for your hugely valuable insights and time. Appreciate it.